All right, hello everyone. We'll go ahead and get started to be mindful of our time. Welcome to Breakout Session 3, Credit for Prior Learning in our military students. My name is Nicole Rowe. I'm with Palomar College, and I'm joined today by Mark Diasis. He is with Norco College. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the why. We'll talk about how credit for prior learning impacts our military students. And then we're going to go into the two very different approaches that Norco and Palomar have taken in really being able to grant credit for prior learning to military students. So, and then we have our contact information here. The slide presentation will be shared with everyone in the group. Feel free to reach out to either one of us if you have more questions about how articulation works for military credit, or if you just want to find out a little bit more about the various platforms and approaches that we talk about today. All right, and now we're gonna watch. I have this video here, and I realize I may not have. I'm gonna have to stop my sharing. Sorry for 1 second, because I realize I need to share it with computer sound. Okay. So this is a video put on by the Foundation for the Community College Chancellor's Office, and it really talks a lot about the impact credit for prior learning has on our military population.
The concept of credit for prior learning, conceptually it says that whatever learning has taken place outside of a college brick and mortar ought to have some viability when you come into a college context and you want to use that learning and have it apply to what you want to study next.
We're seeing a lot of students come into us with those skills, and understandably, they're frustrated when they're put into a first-year course. It's a waste of time for them. It's a waste of money if they're on financial aid or the GI Bill. And students may leave our colleges because they don't feel that they're getting any credit for the work they've already done.
When I was in the military, I spent 40 hours a week, every week for 6 months in a classroom with an instructor teaching us Russian all day long. When I got out of the language training, I was fluent in Russian. I was under the assumption that my training in the military, that all of those things would translate to something within the school that they would give me credit for. And I found out that none of that was accurate, that I had no credit for anything that I had done in the military.
When you hear the stories of students who are stuck in a spiral of higher education where they can't get some of their competencies accounted for through prior learning, I think that will bring other people on board as to the importance of this for our students so that they aren't spending longer than they need to trying to get that degree or certificate.
The Chancellor's Office is definitely considering policy around credit for prior learning, and we're being urged to do this by our legislature. The policy will drive our ability to amplify and scale.
I think that the system would benefit from a clearer roadmap and a more systematic approach on certain levels, provided that it didn't remove the authentication of those skills by faculty.
If we are to give credit for prior knowledge, I think it is important that the professors understand that in a broad stroke way, they still have control over the assessment rubric and that they have the final decision.
We are really trying to shift a paradigm that says, how do we become student ready?
By honoring credit for prior learning, it would save students time and money and allow them to become independent tax-paying citizens much sooner.
I want to get back into the workforce. I want to be a contributing member of society again, like I once was in the military and the jobs that I had. I want to be the guy that's supporting his family and supporting the economy and supporting the industry that he works in. The credits that I get from the prior experience that I had is only going to help me do that faster.
We know we have a lot of untapped resource in our human potential. So that's what education is all about, is bringing that out and seeing it and awarding it and fostering it and allowing individuals to maximize and live into their destiny.
So as you can see, the Chancellor's Office has really taken an interest in serving our military students through credit for prior learning. And this also was really important for our Y at Palomar College because we actually serve one of the largest active duty military military student population. So these are actually students who are currently serving in the military and also attending Palomar College in their spare time. And then we also serve the second largest population of veteran students. So for Palomar, we knew that this credit for prior learning journey, and that really drove us to move forward with a lot of our policies. But as part of that process, what we really needed to do as well was really change how we view credit for prior learning across campus. So we needed to really bring all of the various stakeholders on board. And the way that we did that was by sharing data about our students. So in particular, this military information about this data about our military student population, to show that we do serve a large population of military students, and that credit for prior learning can really increase success and retention of those students, get them on the path. If we're thinking about guided pathways, really getting them on their path sooner, helping them choose that path, and then ultimately completing their program. And so we also used the interest from some of our early adopters. We really used our faculty to help gain momentum. So those faculty who have already been working with students who come in with military experience, and they may have been waiving courses, maybe introductory courses or prerequisite courses to some of their programs. We saw a lot of this in particular with our diesel mechanics program. So students who had been diesel mechanics in the military, had gone through a particular set of training courses. They would come to our faculty, our chair, and our discipline experts, looking to not wanting to jump right into an introduction course, but hoping to be able to move further along, and our faculty were waiving those courses. So when credit for prior learning came along, they were so excited to be able to actually grant credit to these students, because what was ultimately happening is while these students might get through all the courses, they would be deficient in units to actually complete the certificate or degree, or even to transfer. And so by being able to grant credit, they were really excited to start being able to do that. So we used those faculty to really start building the momentum among other faculty, and we started with that with our early adopters and using them. And then another thing that was really helpful for us is we used our counselor who was assigned to our Veteran Center, who was really familiar with our military student population, their benefits, and the experiences that they already have, and their experience. And that was also our credit for prior learning counselor. So we have a counselor assigned specifically to credit for prior learning, who also is our veteran counselor. So this counselor in particular is really familiar with that unique experience of the military students. That was really helpful, in particular in these early stages as we were starting to get some of our first students moving through the process. Having a counselor that really understands credit for prior learning, but also really understands our military student population has been really helpful. And then also conversations about credit for prior learning and the new student-centered funding formula. There are a lot of concerns early on about how this could potentially impact enrollment. We had, a lot of folks were concerned that if we were giving credit for classes, that it could decrease enrollment. But really what we had to do is really change the conversation about to focus on student completion. So if we can get students on their paths sooner, and they success and retain in their classes and programs at a higher rate, we're going to see higher rates of completion, which ultimately does benefit the college when we start thinking about the student-centered funding formula. And also when we start thinking about just getting when we think about guided pathways and getting them through their pathway faster. So we really had to use all of that information in order to change kind of how we talk about credit for prior learning on our campus. And now I'm going to hand it over to Mark. He's going to talk about Norco's approach to providing credit for military experience. And he's going to talk a lot about a platform that they've created at Norco. And then we'll jump in and I'll take back over and I'll talk a little bit about Palomar's approach as well. Two very different approaches, but showing ways that your college, really practical ways that your college might think about how they can offer credit for prior learning for military experience.
Thank you, Nicole. So I wanted to get started by discussing ACE. And as we're discussing military CPL, it's really important to understand the role of the American Council on Education, or ACE, essentially serving as an evaluating agency for all military courses, and they provide credit recommendations for all branches of the military. Evaluations that are conducted by, or all evaluations from ACE in terms of recommendations are conducted by faculty members from colleges and universities, and they oftentimes even allow individuals to submit requests to be part of this ACE recommendation or the review process. These evaluations are based on content, scope, and rigor, oftentimes aligning with SLOs and also ensuring that the curriculum is current. And not all military occupations or courses have credit recommendations, but for those that do, these have been reviewed by at least 3 faculty members with 100% consensus. And every course recommendations is reviewed every 10 years. And so ACE makes sure that it's current and ensures that the recommendations are thoroughly reviewed. I did provide the military guide link at the bottom just for your reference. Next slide, please. So while we have the ACE as our body that conducts the evaluation process, it's really a huge step to review that. Also, though, when you are reviewing military credits, there's a lot of work involved. Oftentimes, really, the work really revolves around the faculty review process. So by no means is this like a procedural step that I'm providing in terms of a manual or general process. It is just things that needs to be done in order for courses to then be articulated or evaluated. So generally a student would submit a JST, that's a joint services transcript, and on there has ACE recommendations as well. So someone on campus will need to determine the military occupation and the course that may articulate to a particular course that you have at your campus. So that requires a lot of searching through ACE, the website itself, and then the burden really falls onto the faculty member to be able to review that. And again, the faculty member has the last say on whether or not to approve or deny an articulation. And then, once approved, then the student records will then be updated. It does take a long time for this to be done. We realize that faculty members are teaching, and that's the primary role of the faculty members, but also they're grading, they're preparing, and et cetera. So we know that it's a laborious process. And in some cases, when you have a multi-college district, oftentimes like we do, we have one curriculum at 3 colleges, so in our district. So oftentimes there needs to be curriculum approval before we can even provide that on transcripts. So just wanted to give a general overview of the general process. And we know that, again, it is a laborious process. So at Norco, our approach was to build the military articulation platform. And so this system is a cloud-based system and connecting really the ACE courses and college courses together, all in one view and one system. It really does provide that enhanced review process for faculty members. And I'll show a little bit of what that looks like a little later. More importantly, it does store all of the articulations, whether approved or denied. It does save a lot of time so that you're not having to review courses that have already been processed or even denied in some cases. The military articulation platform has several APIs that regularly updates our system. So essentially, when you have a college catalog that has an update, addendum, etc., that's already kind of updated also in the military articulation platform. For additional information on the military articulation platform, I have the video attached with a very light shaded link on there, but you feel free to access that at your own time. Next slide, please. So in a nutshell, our review process is a 4-stage review process where it starts with our evaluator taking a look at what courses might be a potential approval, something that may need to be reviewed by a faculty member. And oftentimes our evaluator is looking at the total number of units, any kind of course similarities, skill levels, some competencies, content, and then hours or the length of the course before it's actually reviewed by the faculty member. Once kind of all of that has been checked, it is sent over. Can you please put the video on the, okay, we'll do that in a little bit. So once the evaluator sends it over to the faculty member for review, we wanted to emphasize that the faculty member who's reviewing it would just perhaps take a look at it and have all the tools necessary on one screen before then pushing that over to the articulation officer. Articulation officer, and then that AO will then serves as another pair of eyes, essentially. If there's any kind of review that the faculty may have missed, we are able to then send it back to the faculty for additional review, or just then push it forward for publishing. This 4-stage process is a college decision. At Norco College, we decided that we would provide that support for the faculty member on the front end and the back end. So we have a 4-stage process. It is a college decision based on how your college may want to go ahead and restructure the workflow. Next slide, please. So the faculty review process really just begins with an email notification, and it serves as a reminder that a potential articulation is in the queue. Again, it is something that's reviewed by our evaluator first and foremost, and then the faculty can view this through a side-by-side view of all the necessary information to make a determination. So not everything is approved, and so we provide the tools necessary to move that forward if it is. And again, the articulation officer serves as the second pair of eyes after the faculty member has reviewed it. And again, I know that faculty members have the last say, but this was determined on our campus in terms of even the faculty wanting another pair of eyes. So again, it is definitely a local decision should you implement the military articulation platform. Next slide, please. So this is just a sample of the faculty review for our ADJ 13 course and the occupation code 311A. As you can see, all of the course information is listed on the left, including SLOs, PLOs, and then on the right, we have the military description, and that description includes the recommendation levels at the bottom, and I think there's additional information at the bottom that I wasn't able to capture, but I wanted to get to the particular action bar at the top right. That action bar then allows faculty to move that articulation forward after it's been reviewed, or not to even move that forward because there may be some issues with that particular course aligning with our course content. The recommendations criteria is a section where any of our reviewers can really take note of any kind of information they'd like to add. So for instance, in this particular sample, our evaluator did not note anything on here. However, in this case, it's been approved. So the faculty has noted a particular information on the notes section at the bottom. And then essentially our AO will have this similar view, but at the top where it says the action bar, it will say move to publishing or implementation. That's just to ensure that we have another pair of eyes again. Next slide, please. So this one is a faculty dashboard, and it's specific to the discipline. And in this case, this faculty member who's viewing this serves as a chair for bio and can view courses that have been reviewed and in the queue for review. If you can see at the bottom here, bottom left, it lists bio, kinesiology, etc. And then to the right, it shows where these courses are currently in the queue. So under the evaluator, there is 1, under Bio 19. There are several in the faculty review and several in the AO review process. So you can kind of track where you have your courses moving forward. Wanted to just kind of touch base on the top bars. We have several courses in the evaluator queue, 1,532, and then moving forward to 169 courses that we've implemented. And we've maximized our digital electronic certificate program. The 169 courses equates to 152 occupations and 17 military courses. So currently we have 169 total. We are also part of a 3-college district, as I mentioned. So many of those courses that are still kind of in the adopting phase. So I'm going to talk a little bit about adopting articulations. May still be in the AO review as well. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we are part of a 3-college district, Riverside being our sister college. This just shows you a view that our 3-college district actually has one curriculum. So because we offer courses at any of the 3 colleges and students can take classes at any of the 3 colleges, when Riverside City College approves an articulation, it's not completely approved until all 3 colleges have reviewed it. In our case, we have policies that we have lined up and agreed upon. It's basically 2 out of 3 votes. And so this will pop up as an articulation that we can adopt because it's a course that's offered also at Norco College. So I know moving forward, we are looking at should colleges adopt or implement MAP, that this adopting of articulations may be an available function, not just within the district, but also within colleges in the state. So that's just something that we are looking at this moment. Next slide, please. So in the spring, we have completed an award for one of our veterans. And as I mentioned earlier, digital electronics was one of the certificate programs that we've exhausted and really looked into several ways that we can articulate these courses. And so we awarded 15 units to a particular veteran this past spring. I wanted to just kind of focus in on the notation section of the transcript. We did note that it's based on prior learning, and these credits came from JSTs. So we were able to publish that, and so it's transcripted and the student earned that. You might also see at the bottom of that, at the last 3 courses, those are courses that we have already kind of published on our catalog as courses that we will award to our veterans. So PE credits, electives, etc. These courses that we've awarded are also available in tests. We know that it's a little bit more easily accessible in terms of open source access. So we are putting all of our articulations also in tests. So next slide, please. Just wanted to kind of touch base on some of the other functionality included in MAP. So the outreach component will include all of the discharging vets that we once received from CalVet, and that's for the state of California. We received that a couple of years ago. We probably need to have that updated as well. But the good thing about the outreach component is you can go ahead and filter through military occupations and courses, and then even by zip code. So if maybe you're offering a program at your college that serves a particular occupation, you might zero in on outreaching to those particular veterans who might then benefit from the credit earned at your college in that specific program. The second piece is the student database. So we incorporated a repository in the system, in the MAP system itself, so that we're not having to go into our SIS and really bounce back to multiple systems to review. This also allows us to then store all the articulations, whether approved or denied, so that we're not having to re-review an articulation that may have been reviewed already, or if it's an articulation that was already completed at our sister colleges. And the third thing is the MAP self-service, which is coming very soon. This MAP self-service allows, it's similar to the way tests is conducted, where it's open source. So essentially a student who's not yet, or a veteran who's not yet a student at our campus can essentially go on to the military articulation platform self-service, enter their occupation, and determine if their particular occupation has already been reviewed and what are the total number of credits awarded for that particular occupation, and then perhaps also aligning with that particular program that we may offer at the college, so that they can have a nice planning tool and a pathway moving in. And this is even prior to going to attending at Norco College. So those are the three additional functionalities that we have in MAP. Just wanted to note that in 2017, we started having this discussion at Norco College with this military articulation platform, and the planning began then. But it really was because we received some funding, an appropriation from our Assembly member, Sabrina Cervantes, and we are also part of the Strong Workforce Inland Empire Desert Regional Consortium. It's a group of about 11 colleges in the desert region, Region 9 particularly, who was granted funding to be able to then award credit to military or veterans. So we were able to receive that funding, and round 5 funding was just recently approved, hence the reason why the MAP self-service is coming very soon. So again, there's a MAP video that I provided for you in the earlier in the slide. Feel free to access that if you have any other questions regarding the military articulation platform. I'm happy to answer any questions via email as well. At this point, that's what we did for Norco College. I'm happy to turn it over to Nicole Rowe, who's going to discuss the Palomar approach.
Hi, everyone. Yes, thank you. I want to kind of go back to Mark's initial slide where he talked about the process for reviewing courses. And so really ultimately what it historically and the way it currently works at Palomar, or the way it's working in most places, it's a very reactive approach. So once the student submits a JST or their joint service transcript, that's what then triggers the review of the ACE military guide. And so as we were, as Palomar was looking at that, what we what I want to highlight about the ACE military guide is that those are recommendations. So each institution gets to decide for themselves how they want to use and align those recommendations, and recognize that every military member has a unique experience, and that you can use military articulation as one form of credit for prior learning, but you can also use other forms of prior learning assessment in addition to those ACE recommendations to validate the scope of that military member's knowledge, skills, and abilities. So what you can look at is using potentially a portfolio where a student might upload their JST in addition to some other types of assignments that then a faculty member could review to determine if they meet the outcomes needed to provide credit. And so that was so as we started doing this work, we started getting contra training schools, and they said, hey, we have these Marines going through this extensive training, and for some reason, whenever they go to these college campuses, they're not getting any college credit for it. And like I said, it goes back to what the process historically has been, is that military member submits their JST, and the process to actually do one-to-one articulation and review is really laborious. And so oftentimes that military member just gets a bunch of elective credits that don't really count towards any actual requirements for graduation, except that they're just units. And so what we started doing is working with those those particular units that reached out to us, and we did a direct review of their training curriculum. And so this does take a lot more time. It required a lot more work from our faculty members, from our credit for prior learning team, and the military personnel really overseeing these various training programs. But what it has allowed us to do is we've actually been able to grant more credit than ACE even recommended. And so what we have decided at Palomar is to do that portfolio assessment rather than just the submission of the JST. And that's allowed us to then grant more than the ACE recommendations. And what we thought that is what also the benefit of doing this route is we can use this as a recruitment and outreach tool. So once we know that a particular military training program is equal to, get students maybe halfway towards a degree if they complete a particular training program, we can now work with the instructors of that training program to market our program and say, hey, did you know that when you're done with your particular program, you can enroll at Palomar and finish your degree in 6 months or 1 year because you're already halfway there. So it's an opportunity for us to be able to get our name out there, an opportunity for potentially increased enrollment, and really getting students on a path for their program. And so I wanted to kind of give an example of how this came to be and what we did and the direct impact that we had on Palomar. So we were contacted by the lead instructor for the Aviation Communication System Technician program at a Marine Corps base. And he said, we have, again, as I mentioned, we have a bunch of Marines that go through this training program and they don't end up getting any college credit for it. What's going on? And it's because if you look at the ACE recommendation for Aviation Communication Systems Technician, they recommend the credit, 14 semester hours of credit here for these particular courses in management, supervision, communications, and only if a Marine or service member has a particular rank. So staff sergeant, gunny sergeant, master sergeant, and these are not your younger or newer Marines. These are well-established Marines who have many years of experience in the military. And so Marines who are doing, only one contract with the Marine Corps and they were then getting out are most likely not in these ranks. And so they weren't getting any credit for it. Also, the title of the occupation of Aviation Communication Systems Technician seems so, we didn't have any classes like that. We don't have an aviation program. And so these students might get 14 hours of elective credit. That doesn't count towards anything. What we ended up doing is as we were talking to this lead instructor, he said, well, no, our students are doing a lot of computer networking. They're doing, they get Cisco training. And we said, really? Okay, let's get our faculty member from our computer science department who he's our specialist for networking and cybersecurity. And let's get you guys together to really kind of talk your content speak, all of the computer science jargon and figure out what exactly it is that you're doing in your training program and what our courses at Palomar College are really teaching. What are our SLOs? And so they pulled up the military program outline of instruction. It's back and forth many times, but what this aviation communication system course, so this is the number M09E2Z1, really, this training program really aligned well with our networking fundamentals course, along with our Windows client course, our Windows server, Windows system administration, our Cisco networking courses, and really aligned well with a lot of our classes. And so what we realized is these Marine Corps students are completing 600 plus hours of training, and we were able to align that to 22 units of our computer science networking credit, in addition to some elective courses. And so when we when we started looking at our program maps that we started working on as part of our guided pathway program, we realized that the credits these students get through their training program, they're all but 2 classes away from a certificate, to our certificate in computer network administration with an Cisco. So between that, between those specific courses and the electives, plus the fact that they also get their area E requirement and physical fitness requirement credit because they attend boot camp, that they're really only a small handful of courses away from an associate's degree at Palomar College. And we would have never known that just based on the ACE recommendation alone, had we not done that one-to-one faculty review with those military instructors. And so what we have now started doing, so now that we've already outlined that, we're actually looking at, potentially creating a flyer, scheduling maybe a information session before those Marines are done with their training program to get in there and let them know that they're 2 classes away from a certificate at Palomar, that they're only a small handful of classes away from an associate's degree, and that they can really get that much closer to once, they can identify their pathway really early on and really get through to completion very quickly. And so I know we have a small group here, so we are open to questions. We still have about 19 minutes left, so we still have plenty of time. So feel free to ask questions, and we're happy to go deeper into kind of how we got started if you have questions about that. But let us know.
I had a question.
Yes.
For Mark. Mark, the MAP program, because I haven't looked at the video, is that something that you guys bought? Where does that come from?
So we received some funding. We actually built it from the ground up. Yeah, and actually on this session, we have our chief systems architect of the military articulation platform joining us. His name is Pedro Campos, and he's the one that designed it based on what we wanted. So when we received the funding from Assemblymember Cervantes and also joined by the funding from Strong Workforce in the Inland Empire Desert Regional Consortium, we were able to really craft what we really wanted to see in terms of leveraging a seamless approach for our faculty members, because at the get-go, we were unable to scale it. We just didn't have the capacity. So we had to really talk to a software engineer in order to really leverage technology and utilize that to, make it so that it's doable and scalable.
Wow.
So right now, I think 10 or is it 11 colleges, I believe, are part of this Inland Empire Desert Regional Consortium. So basically in the Region 9 area. And so all have implemented MAP, and there are various levels of onboarding. I know that there's a lot of interest from other colleges to implement MAP as well. And the idea is for us to share it to all the colleges if that's the direction that people want to go. We are definitely not trying to just keep this for us as our resource. We're definitely willing to share it. And I know my internet is unstable, so I'm sorry. But we're definitely interested in sharing this as well. So we're currently in discussions with the State Chancellor's Office in terms of determining how to scale the military articulation platform, especially when now we are required to go ahead and award CPL particularly.
That would save an amazing amount of work for the rest of us.
Mm-hmm.
If the Chancellor's Office could scale that, and how exciting to think about a centralized repository where we can look at articulating all this stuff. Very exciting.
Thank you.
I may to add one additional comment what Mark indicated. We are now in the works with the COCI system to interface on a way that we can pull all the curriculum data for every college in the state without having to be connected to your curriculum system. So that is enabling MAP to be able to be deployed to all colleges in California.
That's very exciting. I don't. I'm right here. Like, how can we get a hold of it?
I mean,
I feel like these guys have worked, and ladies, they've all worked so hard, in their careers in the military, and to, you know, historically we've struggled with people getting out of the military and back into civilian life. So for something like this to be such a soft landing, it just, oh, it makes me so happy.
So I have a question for Mark, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So Mark, you said that you used both map and test. Can you tell me why you use both?
So MAP is currently not an open source in terms of reviewing what has been done in terms of articulations at the local college at Norco. So we want to be able to show that we have done articulations in terms of military occupations and courses. And the only open source area right now is a test. So we thought we might as well go ahead and allow access that way, because in our group of colleges in the Inland Empire, several colleges are already looking at what's been articulated at Norco or what's been articulated at Riverside, and perhaps other colleges can just adopt it rather than having to do the whole review process, considering that some of these courses are aligned based on, you know, codes, etc. So we are right now, we don't have the open source access in MAP, although that was in the works in terms of providing that option. But for now, it was easiest for us to go ahead and just do the tests as well and publish it there.
And Mark, it looks like there was a question to see if there's a link to test.
Yeah, let me go ahead and pull that up. I can go ahead and provide that information. I also, if you want me to, I can even share what it looks like in tests. Do you want me to share that? Let's see.
Yeah, so
Sure, that's helpful.
yeah, that would be great if we could look and see where we might go to look at one of your to see which courses you've already aligned to review.
Okay. So this is just a snapshot because I was worried that I'm going to have issues with the internet and not being able to have access. So I did a snapshot. Let me just share. Can you see that okay?
Yep.
So we have a line of ACE courses here and occupations. And then we have, as I mentioned earlier, we've exhausted all of our digital electronic certificate program and really maximize that. So we have, several military courses can articulate to one particular course at the college level. So we have a total of 9 courses that we have articulated to 169 military occupations and courses. I can go ahead and access. Pedro, do you have access to tests?
Yes, give me a moment. I'll pull it
Okay.
up.
So if we can, if we can pull how we, because I think there's additional ones. There's a page 2 that was included that's in tests as well. So we're definitely trying to just grant access, being that this is open source. I think another university is doing this, which is Cal Poly, is also publishing it in tests. So, and it's one of the sites that counselors are very familiar with. So we just thought we'd start there before we can go ahead and try to make MAP an open access site as well. Pedro, I'm going to stop sharing.
Are there any other questions that maybe we can help answer while we wait for that in the meantime?
Okay, this is the test site. Can everybody see my screen?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Mark, I don't think they need a login account to access tests, right?
They will need to. At this point, I think only a few members in our institution are able to log in and pull or input information, but I know that they'll need to have a login information. I don't have one, so our evaluator has it. So I can't really pull it.
Okay, let me see if I can find that link. Just a minute.
So this might be something that the folks you might want to take back to your individual college and find out who on your campus has a login for tests, and let them know that Norco's already started putting articulation in there, and so you could potentially, if you're looking at where to even get started, again, you can wait for the JSTs to come to you. But we like to be as proactive as we can. So that might be a good starting point, is maybe looking at what Norco's already done and put into tests. And maybe that's where you start kind of creating your list or start sending those through faculty review. And maybe that process will be a bit faster if faculty know that other faculty in the community college system have already reviewed. And
one of the things that I'd like to add is the onboarding of veterans and the intake process will drastically change once you have involved military CPL in the mix. Oftentimes there's a lot of, and as Ben mentioned, there's a lot of disruptions, not only for the campus, but really for the veteran as well. There could be some implications, and oftentimes it's financial aid related. So many of our vets will rely on housing allowance. So giving them the credit will reduce the number of courses that they need to take to meet that 12 units full-time load and then maximize their housing allowance. And oftentimes these housing allowance are they're part of their livelihood. So there's a decision there that needs to be made. Oftentimes it's just a nice sit down with a veteran and really get them to understand what they're signing up for. Sometimes time is of essence and they want to just leverage that. And so they'll agree to it. But you really need to probably talk a little bit about the financial implications as well, just so they're good to go and they're not having any issues moving forward.
I think that's a really good point, Mark. And one of the reasons why I think it was so valuable for us at Palomar to have our credit for prior learning counselor also be our veteran counselor, because there are a lot of conversations that need to happen around, particularly if they're using the GI Bill, as you mentioned. If they're using credit for prior learning through let's say credit by exam, there are different, the Title V says you may charge fees. And so how does that impact the aid that they receive? Can it be used for it? Yes, but what does that do to the number of months they're allowed? So with the GI Bill, I believe they get 30 months of aid. So, if the type of credit that they're being earned is eating into that, they need to weigh that as an option. On the other hand, through this military articulation, if that can get them that much closer, that allows them to not have to take classes that then impact that length of time, right? So there's a lot that goes into really figuring out what that military affiliated veteran student is really interested in pursuing. So it's really important that they meet with a counselor early on and figure out, we want to make sure we're not granting them a bunch of credit that they don't intend to use, because that does have long-term impacts and negative effects on them. Okay, well, it looks like we have about 6 minutes left, so you get a few extra minutes to yourselves today. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, feel free to reach out to myself or reach out to me, Mark. We're happy to answer any questions. We did provide some links in the chat to the MAP video, to the ACE website, as well as the test website. And hopefully you can use those resources to review on your, and then I believe also that the presentation will be provided to everybody along with recording. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.